She's so quiet, like so dreadfully shy. Yeah. But we drove through San Luis Obispo twice because we were up in like Santa Cruz area. And now Paisley decided she wants to go to Santa Cruz because she likes the food there. And I was like, she's my kid for sure. And Emma's all like, I'm gonna go to Humboldt for the trees. We stayed in the trees in Santa Cruz or in Boulder Creek, and it was so pretty. It was so pretty. I didn't want to leave, you know. Oh, how dare you. That's crazy. Yeah.
That's so fair. It's just hard enough. And I am. That's why I'm.
What is today?
I'm between Berkeley and Davis now, and I'm like, it's a
Yeah.
perfect amount of far away. That's so fair. And like our family. No, that's so fair. It's hard.
All right, good morning. I don't know if this is overwhelming or exciting, but we have 6 classes left. Is that overwhelming?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just kidding. There are so many classes left, so many, like 62, I don't know, right? Week 2. Where my point is, I know that it's overwhelming right now. I hear that like kind of going around, but we're almost there. Like it's coming. It's really soon. We don't have that much left of the semester. Yeah, did you have is that a? That includes today, but not the final since we don't meet on that day, right? So technically, if we include that, it's 7. Is that better, right? That's more. Either way, like I know this is a tough time of the semester for me too, right? For everyone. So hang in there, right? Try and if you need to take time for yourself throughout this, like do it, whatever gets you through it. But we are definitely getting there, right? So we have obviously we'll finish this up today. And then we'll move on to disorders of childhood. And in that one, I always show a film. It's really great practice for your final paper because you're going to diagnose a character in the film like you do in your paper. And it should kind of give you a really good practice for doing that. And then we move into aging and then forensic psych. And then our final paper is due on May 5th, right? And then our final on May 14th. So we're getting there. But still lots of time if that makes you feel better. Yeah.
Do I have to hand it in online and person?
No, just online. Right. You're just turning in that final paper online like you did the other 2. And I'll be grading it online and all that too. I'm sorry I had to cancel class on Monday, right? We were up in Santa Cruz and like it just took us forever to get home and everyone was so tired and my kids like wouldn't get up. And so speaking of taking like a day for yourself, like we just had to do that on Monday. So I'm sorry. I hope you all got my announcement. I posted it at like 6, hoping that it would get all of you so no one woke up early. But sorry for that. We're still in really good shape timing wise, so I think we'll be just fine. But we'll jump back into where we left off. Any other questions about like the schedule and what's due and all that kind of stuff? Probably don't want to think about it, but just in case, any questions? Okay, so we got through a couple of these, right? If I go back. So we went through all the odd personality disorders. So remember, these are ones that are characterized like by odd, peculiar, strange behavior, a lot of things in common with like those negative symptoms of schizophrenia. And then we got through antisocial, but we haven't started borderline. That's what I have down. So antisocial again, like someone who's a danger to others and themselves potentially, but mostly others. No empathy, no guilt, a lot of like reckless kind of law-breaking behavior with that history all the way through childhood. But what we'll talk about now, we'll talk about the other one up here, borderline personality disorder. And this is probably one of the more like stigmatized disorders. People having like BPD or borderline personality tends to carry a pretty intense stigma with it. And I know that because, and I'll share this with you, when I was a teenager, I was diagnosed with borderline and it was totally inappropriate. I don't have borderline personality disorder, but I carried that with me for like 20 years, believing it to be true. And typically we don't even diagnose this in teenagers because you're still figuring out your identity. So not only was it inappropriate in terms of it didn't fit me, but it was inappropriate age-wise as well. I know a lot about it for that reason, right? It's something that I'm very familiar with. And interesting with this disorder, the name borderline, the idea behind it is it's on the border between being neurotic and psychotic, right? So that's where the name comes from. But it's on the edge of like not kind of being in contact with reality and not being able to control your emotions. So that's where the term comes from. But we see a lot of instability in your self-image, your mood, and your like emotional regulation, which causes a lot of problems in relationships and leads to a lot of impulsive behavior. See a lot of overlap here with bipolar disorder, and they're often very like wrongly diagnosed. So somebody who has borderline might actually have like bipolar or vice versa. You also see kind of a newer trend with this. A lot of people who have been diagnosed with borderline actually have more like a complex or developmental trauma diagnosis. There's a lot of overlap there as well. But interesting book, I put this up here too, just before, so I don't forget. I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. I feel like that kind of sums up this disorder really nicely. It's a lot of like push and pull, a lot of very mixed emotions. Let me write a couple of words up for this one too. BPD or borderline personality disorder. So I'm going to put up here, let's see, what do I want to write for this one? There's a lot of like reactivity of mood. So mood is kind of all over the place. You're very reactive in the sense that emotions tend to be very strong and very sometimes short-lived as well. There's a lot of instability and impulsivity. Feelings of emptiness are really common. Right, like feeling empty or like there's a hole inside of you. A lot of fear of abandonment. And there's also a lot of like suicidal gestures. So I mentioned that antisocial is the most dangerous to others. This one's the most dangerous to self. There's often a lot of like self-harming, suicidal kind of behaviors. But the emptiness and fear of abandonment also really piggyback on that like complex PTSD or developmental trauma that I just mentioned, which is why they're sometimes kind of misdiagnosed. But you see just a very intense reactivity of mood. You like sway one way to the other very, very quickly. And it's that like, I hate you, I'm so mad at you, like I'm gonna insult you and be angry. And then the second that person leaves, wait, I didn't mean it, I'm so sorry, come back, don't leave me. There's a lot of that kind of like push and pull, which makes relationships challenging, especially if somebody has really poor insight and they're not aware that they're doing that. I found a little video just on like YouTube that kind of describes this disorder, some of the like hallmarks of this disorder. Again, a lot of like fears of abandonment, a lot of emotional reactivity. Talked about splitting as well. Really common with this disorder to have very black and white thinking, enough so that there's a specific type of therapy that's actually been developed for this disorder called DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy. A dialectical is when you have very like black and white polarized views on something, like it's either one way or the other, and there's nothing in the middle. And that's very rarely the case in life. But people who have this disorder, along with other disorders, tend to think in those very black and white terms. So the idea behind this type of therapy is looking at how do we respond more effectively to situations, how do we check the facts, how do we look at the gray areas in between. Very, very common type of therapy specifically for borderline. So kind of looking at those thought patterns. Yeah. Yeah.
I knew somebody with this actually, but they didn't let me know that until quite far on into the friendship. This is like last semester, and again, like I have some trying to do the same basically path as me, and she had said like, oh, we had to like write a paper. I was writing mine on bipolar disorder at the time, and she was like, oh, I'm writing mine on borderline personality disorder. Oh, there's a lot of crossover.
Definitely.
And like, let's do this presentation together. And so we got really close for like studying inside and outside of school. And like at first I didn't think anything of it, but again, a lot of those symptoms were definitely there, and I didn't want to. But I never want to be the person to like make an assumption or make a judgment. And so, but it would get to the point where like she'd start texting me all, like every single day. She'd start calling me every single day. And then like when I wouldn't respond, she'd like assume it was because I like didn't like hated her or something like
Right.
that. And I was like, no. And this like came up a couple times, but never enough to be like a problem. And then I think it got to a point where like she actually, this was like maybe like 5 months in or something like that. We're doing this project together, whatever, assuming that she had said to me, oh, I know nothing about either of these, so it'd be great for us to learn together kind of thing. And then it got to like the 5 month point and she was like, she showed me a video like this. She showed me like 2 videos and she sat me down and she was like, oh, do you want to know something? And I was like, oh yeah. She's like, oh, I have it. And I was like, what? And she was like, oh, I have both. She said I have bipolar disorder and, but like they're trying to decide between.
Sure.
And I was like, okay. And it was a very interesting moment because I was like, wow, like there were things and like patterns over time that I was seeing, but I never wanted to be the perfect issue. And it was just very like, I didn't know how to feel about it. But it was very much like, wow, like I really like, you think you know, but you don't know. And she was like, yeah, the whole time that we were talking about these disorders, well, I already did research on it like years ago, and actually I was just testing you on all these things.
Okay.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it was definitely a lot, but definitely an interesting experience. And it's a very difficult, I find it's very difficult for that person. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like she has a very hard time. And so I ended up having like a lot of empathy for that situation, but it taught me a lot. And like, especially about the black and white thinking specifically.
Yeah.
And like how much it really does impact the way in which, you know, these people act and just view the world around them and their relationships. And it's kind of a sad reality, actually, if you're struggling with it.
And that description of like, you didn't text back. And so the instant assumptions, they hate me, they don't like me, right? Like, and that's very typical of this disorder. And like you mentioned, kind of trying to decide between the two, there's so much in common between bipolar disorder, bipolar 1 specifically, and borderline personality. And so they're very commonly misdiagnosed, or they can be comorbid. You can have both, which obviously just makes it even harder for somebody to deal with and for people to navigate that know them. Right? Yeah, interesting, right? It can be challenging, not only for that individual, but for the people in their life, right? Whether it's short term or long term. Yeah.
Told me that they were diagnosed with borderline disorder. And I was well aware of that. I knew like kind of how to deal with it because I read that book and I read that because of my friend.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it any easier to deal with
No.
because I would get, it was kind of a similar thing, like almost every single day, just nonstop texting, calling, trying to hang out with me. But that wasn't the biggest issue. If he was getting like paragraph text messages of like, hey, like I've noticed you've been like disagreeing. It'll be like, I don't respond for like a day. And it'd be like, do you hate me? Like, you can be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no.
That's all.
Yeah, no, I have a life, I have other people in my life, and yeah, they even wanted me to sign like a friend NDA. But like don't talk about me to other people, like keep our friendship very like it was so bizarre.
Yeah. And that like, as again, it's that real or perceived abandonment, right? Like really like hyper interpreting things to the point of, well, you haven't responded for days, so you must hate me, we're not friends anymore. When it could be for a million other reasons, right? Some people respond very quickly, other people need more time, they might get busy. But it's not like, oh, you must be, you know, vegan, and then to go to the extreme of things like that, right? That's interesting too. It's an intense disorder, right? Or it can be, obviously, like anything else, it's on a spectrum. Some people have really good awareness with this, and that makes it better. And if you have worked on these things, you get better and better at them. Like doing this, like I've done this with clients before, and you start to get in a rhythm with it where like you can like start doing it more automatically, and then people get better and better and better at their challenging their thoughts, but it requires a lot of effort to get there. Yeah. Yeah.
These problems, and he told me that he disagreed with diagnosis and said that like whenever he has any symptoms like related to borderline, it's like his OCD. Like, and so because of the stigma, and a lot of times it's women who are diagnosed with borderline.
Very much so.
Like he just completely disagrees with it, which is crazy because you know he obviously fits like every single symptom. Like the therapist knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Diagnosed him, but yeah, it's just I think it's interesting because I think that it is sort of like, this is kind of a hot take, but kind of like modern day, like hysteria diagnosis
Yeah.
in some cases.
Mhm.
And so I can definitely see why a lot of times when, even like, when men are exhibiting the same symptoms, they've also been like diagnosed with like narcissistic personality disorder, like
Right.
anything other than. So I think that it's just very stigmatized still.
Very, and it is way more diagnosed in
Oh, yeah,
women than men,
absolutely.
like by a
Yeah,
lot,
it's 8%.
Yeah. but much, much more common. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
And it's like really hard because I have to move that way, or I can't make my own decisions. Like,
Mhm.
my mom has to move me forward. It's really hard, but I mean, I'm on medication, so
Mhm.
it helps a lot. Like,
Yeah,
I remember I always make it important if I'm gonna date someone, they need to know everything about me because I don't want to drag them into something that can't. It's
Sure.
not fair. So I told one of my boyfriends a while ago, and he actually used that against me. Like, I was trying to comfort him one time, and he asked me if I took my meds, and I remember when we broke up, he told people I'm like a crazy bipolar. But it's not true, like none of that is true because I was I was monitoring like everything that I was doing.
sure.
And I was in IOP and I did all these things, but I guess the point is I'm trying to destigmatize it because it's,
Yeah.
you know, like we can be like normal too.
Yeah, right. And like everything else, it's on a spectrum. And it's really awful when people use anything about you against you, let alone, like something that you've been open about and like are trying to like cope through. It is so stigmatized, but it shouldn't always be. There are a lot of people who have borderline who live with it wonderfully, right? And they're fine and their relationships are fine. And it's not always like devastating. And then there are people who have it so severely that it makes everything very hard, right? But to use something against you like that is just mean, right? I'm glad you're not with them anymore, right? Because that's mean, right? Like when you are open about something and vulnerable about something and then to use it against you, right? And again, a lot of people have these disorders, right? I imagine there are people in this room who have like this disorder too, right? And it is stigmatized, but it's something that people learn to live with. Like it's your personality, and so people learn to live with it. And this is so helpful, right? Like I said, I've done this with clients. There's a technique called like Dear Man, I think it is, where like you literally go through and analyze things, and it becomes like I said, you can get really good at this. Like you can kind of unlearn some of these things. And then people who don't have that insight and don't have that openness, that's when it tends to be much, much harder. There were as another yeah.
The fear of losing it, does that come from like a specific trauma or is that like just kind of like an anxiety that comes with it?
There's a very strong.
I kind of have that like same anxiety, like, oh, like if my friend isn't texting me back, and I feel like that same thing. If that's like a constant thing, and I can understand that too, but
Yeah.
I was just wondering if like that fear, if it's like a specific thing like with that, or if it comes from like a specific trauma that's like.
Can be either. So there are very strong correlations with like trauma and BPD. Okay, so a lot of it, like attachment related trauma as a child is very common, which is why, like I mentioned, that CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is rooted in childhood trauma specifically, is very commonly confused with this. They have a lot of like that fear of abandonment, that emotional reactivity. This one is something that is new. It's not even in the DSM yet, but it will be, I would imagine, in the next one. But they're both rooted in like childhood loss or childhood trauma, like loss of a parent, or maybe a parent was unavailable, or poor attachment patterns with a parent or caregiver. Really common with this, and that's often where the fear of abandonment comes from. It's rooted in something that happened, right? So it's not necessarily illogical, but it might not be relevant anymore. And it's almost like really common with this as well as parts work. I don't know if any of you have heard of like IFS, internal family systems. I'll write it up here. IFS or parts work. Right. So what they look at is like there's clearly childhood parts of you that were abandoned, right? Or like struggled or had trauma. I'm going to work with those childhood parts and help them see that you're no longer a child in that situation anymore. And that can be really helpful with this too. It's a lot of like working through stuff, but it's typically rooted in something happening, which is why those fears are there. They're logical in that way. Yeah,
So let's say for a family that has 5 kids.
yeah,
And can like 4 of the kids maybe not have this, but one of them does.
Sure.
Because they just reacted to it, or maybe they saw something more than the other 4 did or something.
yeah.
For example, like cheating and alcohol abuse and see what else, just a lot of like fighting amongst the rest of the siblings, but yet even though the mother was really around or supportive, but yet she over coddles when she is around that one child.
Sure.
That creates a lot of, and then the person, yeah.
Well, then age differences too, right? So like, let's say, like, for example, I have 2 brothers, but one wasn't around when I was growing up. They adopted me much later. But my younger brother, he's 3 years younger than me. But we have polar opposite experiences of our childhood, right? Even though we were raised in the same family,
Household,
same
yeah.
household, nothing like interrupted it. Because I was older, I'm aware of and remember things that my brother doesn't. Like, we'll talk about, like, I remember my mom was like hospitalized tons of times when I was a child for her bipolar and depression. I remember visiting her in hospitals and sitting outside NA and AA meetings. My brother didn't remember any of it, right? So we had like polar opposite experiences despite being raised in the same family. So interesting how even in the same dynamic,
Yeah.
it can be different, like maybe a parent interacts with one child very differently. Or they have different, the age gaps make it one way or the other. It can totally be possible that one has it and one doesn't. Yeah, that's very, very common. Yeah,
I feel like this is also a disorder, like you mentioned how people are kind of diagnosing themselves with autism, this is also,
Yeah.
this is an internet fad, like
Yeah.
people would diagnose themselves with this, if they just had like 1 or 2
Right.
symptoms when you know, the law.
yeah.
Or, you know. I
And the
think that-
severity has to be
Yeah,
more.
severity as well, and so I think that a lot of people sort of through having a fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
With having borderline, it's just not true at all. Like,
Yeah.
it comes with some of the other symptoms, and so I feel like for this, like it should be, I don't know, there should also come with like a warning, not that anybody in here would, you know, diagnose themselves, but it's really easy to see yourself in this disorder.
Yeah.
Particularly.
It's easy to see yourself in any of these,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Yeah.
especially borderline though, because
Yeah.
it's like just an extreme of heavy activity, and a lot of people struggle with that.
Of course.
And so I think that it's just, I don't know, interesting that there was a fad about it, you know, that was so popular a few years ago. And I think
Disorders go through these
it's-
weird fads of popularity,
Yeah.
right? Like autism right now,
Really?
autistic spectrum disorder is like the disorder. I heard too, they're gonna make like a they wanna make a registry of everyone
Oh my
who's
God,
like
it's just
diagnosed as
Crazy,
autistic, like,
crazy.
you know, and send people with it to wellness camps. I mean, just like we swing so far with like what is like the thing. And a few years ago, this was like one of the things, right? And we've kind of moved to
There's
like,
also the opposite thing where people diagnose
Yeah.
themselves.
sure.
You know, just.
And I think most of us just want to make sense of things,
Yeah.
right? And that's where it comes from. Because remember, we all have elements of every single one of these, right? Every single disorder. And I talked about that in the first, before we started anxiety disorders, that it's like the most common psychology student thing ever to do of like, I have all of these, right? Not possible, but it's typical of us to all have elements of these, right? Like literally like a little bit of each one of them. Yeah.
No, that's what stresses me out with the academic thing, which is
Yeah.
why I'm glad I'm not diagnosed with autism. However, like, okay, last class, this is gonna sound really weird. However, self-diagnosed autism, but also have the backup of many medical professionals that don't have the degrees to actually diagnose me, but I don't have the $4,500 to actually get the diagnosis.
Mhm.
However, I do have the medical backup. I've been researching it for like 4 to 5 years, and I like I said, have the backup of like a crap ton of medical professionals, but that don't have the degrees and everything, or don't have the ability to diagnose me. Like that's why I'm not, you know.
Yeah.
Stresses me out.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard, like there's always something, right? One of these disorders will be in the news or be popular, and like we go through these swings with them, and this one definitely had like a big like phase of popularity a few years ago, I would say. And again, like one of the more stigmatized disorders, but it doesn't always have to be, right? It can definitely be something that you learn to live with and get really good insight about, which makes it easier. And I think being open with people when you have it, I think is often helpful, right? She just walked out, but often helpful, maybe not always, but most of the time. Two more dramatic ones, histrionic and narcissistic. Histrionic, I put this person here that needs to be the center of attention, right? These have a lot in common, but they're a little bit different. Someone who's histrionic sounds a lot like hysteria, right? Like kind of have some similar threads. So with this, somebody wants to be like in the spotlight and the center of attention. They have a lot of like dramatic but shallow emotionality. So some things up here, I'm gonna write shallow emotions. Very dramatic. Like always on stage. It's like the spotlight's always on you, like you're always on stage in that way. Other things I could write, you're very suggestible. And there's also a lot of seductive behavior that tends to come with this. So somebody who has histrionic, like always wanting everyone to pay attention to them, wanting to be wanted by everyone. It's like you want the spotlight on you. So this is someone who has it like very dramatic, sweeping emotionality, but it's shallow, right? There's like nothing to it, but they're very dramatic and emotional on the surface. Everything has to be this huge deal, flirting with everyone just to prove that you could have them if you wanted them, but you don't really want them. You just want to prove that they want you, right? That's very typical of this disorder. So a lot of like attention seeking, very dramatic emotional behaviors that are often very shallow and don't have a lot of substance behind them. Similar, but a little bit different, narcissistic personality disorder. We spelled this one wrong. There's like too many S's in the middle. Narcissistic. There we go. Got it. With this one, I put somebody with a big head. This person is very full of themselves, right? Everything is about them, a lot of like grandiosity. I am the most important person in the world. Everyone wants to be like me. Everyone wants to be with me. Very full of yourself, very common with this. A lot of entitlement. So you're entitled, arrogant. What else do I want to add? Let me see. You require a lot of admiration. Require admiration. Right. So similar to the other one, but with this one, it's more like you have this exaggerated sense of self-importance. You oftentimes lack empathy. Like, no way I could put myself in your shoes, your lowly shoes, because I'm so much more important, right? It's like that very like inflated sense of self-esteem, wanting everyone to want you and look up to you, which is kind of similar to histrionic. I have a wonderful example of this, probably one of the like better examples. So I'll play this for you. I think it's such a good example of someone who's narcissistic. Girl's reaction when she sees him of that, like, ugh, not you, right? It's like kind of a common like reaction sometimes that you get to people who have this disorder because they're just so oblivious to anyone else's perspective. It's all about you. Like, I've decided I want to marry you, so I'm gonna have the wedding ready because of course you're gonna say yes, right? Like, it's just that inflated sense of self-esteem. You're entitled, you're arrogant. There's often a lot of like vanity that comes with this as well, which you saw in him a little bit too. Yeah.
Where does it start?
Where? Or like, I mean, like when? A couple of these, so all of these, and we'll talk about the causes together, but it can be actually rooted in a lot of insecurity and feeling very inferior, right? So that's relatively common that people have like a lot of inferiority, so they project superiority. It's like a superiority complex, as Adler would call it. Or it can be that they were raised to feel very important and entitled, and that carries on. So it can kind of go either way with that, but all of these tend to start very young because it's your personality. It's kind of been with you forever. So it can come out of either side where you were raised to feel important and entitled, or the flip side of it. It could go either way. Yeah.
So she had histrionic personality disorder.
Sure.
But she always had to be the center of attention.
Mhm.
She one of my other roommates, she really liked this boy, and my roommate, who always had to be the center of attention, was like, ew, why do you like this boy? And then once they started dating, like, she started flirting with him,
Yeah.
tried to like get in his pants, and then was like claiming that he tried to do stuff with him, and he was, no, I did not try to do anything, I don't like her, because he hated her.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, I don't want to claim anything, because I don't know
Yeah.
their sides of the story. But then, like, she chronically lied to us, which we found out because we kind of like started all talking to each other a little bit more, and we kind of like started talking to her mom, and we realized that like we caught her in like all of these lies.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to be the center of attention. Like the biggest lie that we caught her in was she faked a seizure because she wanted like all of this attention, like she wasn't getting enough attention from us anymore because we were catching her in all of this like
Yeah.
stuff, and we called her mom because we were so concerned about her. And we were like, what do we do? Like, we can't get into her room at night. We were like talking to the RAs about it, and her mom was like, what do you mean? Like, she didn't have a seizure because she had claimed that she called her mom, like on the phone with her mom when it happened. And so we called her mom to like,
Yeah.
confirm with her, and she was like, none of that happened. And we were like, oh.
Kind of creating your own realities, right? And people with both of these, but especially histrionic, there is a lot of like lying, but you believe the lie,
Yeah.
right? And like it becomes your truth in a way because you want everyone to feel bad for you, pay attention to you. Kind of a little bit in common, almost like with Munchausen's, right? Where you want that sympathy and attention, and you'll go to any lengths to get it. That like everything's such a big deal and so dramatic, sort of like on the surface, right? On the surface. Difficult to interact with a little bit. Yeah.
So is it more like you don't know that you're lying, kind of like, which one is it that, you don't necessarily know that you're doing it, but.
You almost just like convince yourself.
Yeah.
Like there's like a
narcissistic is
thread of
you're
knowing.
conscious of that you're doing it.
Narcissistic might lie and like con a little bit, like
Yeah.
for more of like a purposeful deceit.
Okay.
Versus someone who is histrionic, it's almost like you believe the lie. It becomes your reality in a way. Versus someone who's narcissistic might stone cold lie and not care if it's true or not. Like, not my problem, right?
Sure.
Tending to be a little bit more, I won't say malicious in intent, but more conscious maybe in intent. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Just not that he's diagnosed or not diagnosing or anything. I don't know what he got. But he kicked me out at 17 from being 18 because I got my nose pierced in well, I got my septum pierced, not on the side, because apparently I had lied to him, said that I was getting the side of my nose pierced, kicked me out because I got my septum pierced instead, and then proceeded to deny that he was kicking me out and said, I was like, what if I stay? Just like this. And he goes, I would kindly ask you to leave. I said, thank you for clarifying that you're kicking me out of your house.
Mhm.
And he was like, no, I'm not kicking you out. And he was like trying to turn my whole family against me,
Mhm.
saying that I was rude, disrespectful, that I lied to him, lied straight to his face. And like, I had, never disrespected him so much more. And I was the kid.
Very manipulative. Mhm.
Yeah, extremely manipulative.
Yeah.
And he's gotten a lot better now and we're on okay terms, but like that whole beginning part, I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like everything just got flipped.
Yeah,
Because he just started blowing everything out proportionate and lying about everything.
sure.
And I was like, oh my God.
And to be clear, like you can be a chronic liar and be manipulative and not
Yeah.
have a disorder,
But you
but it
would
could also be
say
part of a
things,
disorder, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
gaslight me and say he
Mhm.
never said things, and I'm like, but then he would say, but he said this, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's confusing,
Yeah.
difficult and confusing. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
It's like, I don't know, it's a little weird trait to part of narcissism. My mom biological father, he was like not great growing up, right? But he's like very obviously a person who has a person undeniable, but he like uses intimidation to get things from her, and her siblings.
Okay.
And obviously there's fear from like childhood,
Mhm.
but like what's so weird is like I'm not scared of him at all, and so like when I can hear the way that he talks to her, and it's like he thinks so highly of himself while like the stuff that's coming out of his mouth is like so volatile, and like it's just so interesting because it's like he can't hear himself.
Yeah.
Like, it's like he has like whatever's processing in his brain and like it doesn't.
Like an obliviousness to it, right?
It,
Yeah.
like doesn't sound the same.
Yeah.
Like to anybody else, it's like undeniable that it would be like it's aggressive and
Yeah.
abusive, basically. Like yeah, it's just so weird because like you'll hear him like boasting about something
Sure.
and then we'll like skip over like a different topic and we'll say like such crazy things to say to another person.
Mhm.
And it's just like my mom still obviously has like a little bit of fear there from like childhood, but I'm like, oh my god, this guy is like,
Mhm.
I don't know. It must be so like jumbled in his brain.
Yeah.
It has to be very disordered in order to like.
And there's often that incredible lack of awareness. And interesting, as you were saying that, I was thinking too, there's these are very similar in a lot of ways, right? But we tend to diagnose women with histrionic and men with narcissistic, right? Interestingly, like there tends to sometimes be that gender difference between them of women are like dramatic and emotional and men are more like here, right? But it can go away, like they can be diagnosed pretty equally. Yeah. There can be, it's often something that you see in someone who has that disorder, right? Like they need attention and they'll do it through any means, which could include feigning elements, right? So you definitely tend to see some of that. Yeah.
I also feel like it's societally, like Western believes, like, we go back to like 50s and on 60s, it was still believed like men should only ones to lead the household.
Yeah.
Men should drive, only
Right.
men should work. And I think
Can be
like,
very culturally based
yeah, I
too.
think it's also very culture based how men, especially if you talk to someone who's on the older side, like, I don't know, man in his 90s or getting his 80s, like, you know, a lot of them will say like a woman shouldn't be working, and they're not
Mhm.
saying it from a narcissist perspective.
No, it's a
Like,
cultural belief, right?
I think it's
Or
cultural,
generational.
because, yeah, it's generational and cultural, how they're applying certain gender, what they shouldn't do. And then men feel very important.
Mhm.
Not saying that they aren't, but it makes them feel like, oh,
Right.
I am the grandiose, I am like the household leader, so why should women want to do this? And a lot of people, right, it's very, I feel like society is.
Yeah.
Honestly, grooming, it's not the right word, but like it's socializing men to
Sure.
be narcissistic, and that's why. Men are given narcissistic and women are given the hysterical, men are the emotional side and men
Right.
are the rational side.
Yeah, you see some of that generationally and culturally and so on. Yeah. Last group, these ones are all dominated by anxiety, right? They're the anxious personality disorders. So a lot of anxiety and fear are really common. So avoidant, dependent, and my favorite, you can have a favorite personality disorder. Mine's OCPD. But avoidant with this one, what we see is there's a lot of like discomfort in social situations. You feel very inferior. So like feeling inferior is very, very common with this. You don't feel like you're good enough. You are reluctant to take risks because you're afraid of being embarrassed. There's a fear of embarrassment. So people are very afraid of being embarrassed or appearing like weak or like odd in any way. They're very, very sensitive to any kind of like negative evaluation or negative view in any way at all. And so what you often see is an incredible amount of discomfort in social situations. So very uncomfortable. My daughter says uncomfortable, and I can't like say it any other way now. But you are like, there's discomfort in social situations. This individual, someone with avoidant, they want close relationships, but they're incredibly uncomfortable in them. Okay, right? So they want relationships, but they tend to be afraid of them because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to have something embarrassing happen. So they're very, very uncomfortable. Oh, I can't say that word. She's ruined me. They have a lot of discomfort. We'll go with that one. But they tend to be intensely lonely because they want relationships. They just can't tolerate them out of fear of being embarrassed in some way or maybe viewed negatively in some way. Kind of the opposite here, but some common threads, dependence. The dependent personality disorder. This individual tends to have like an incredible amount of clinging behavior. They cling to somebody else for dear life. So clinging, right? Oftentimes choosing one other person, and they are like their total source of support, decision-making, and everything. You can't survive or do anything without this individual. They are very, very submissive because you don't want to upset that person that you have decided to cling on to and become dependent on. So you will do anything that they say. You go along with anything that they want. A lot of fear of separation. Especially from that one person that you've decided to cling on to, and very helpless when alone. So often this individual won't even make the smallest of decisions on their own, right? What class are you going to take? I'll take that one. What are you going to major in? I'll major in that because I don't want to do it by myself. What should I wear today? I can't make that choice possibly by myself. I need help doing it. There's a lot of like, I'm going to decide whether it's a parent or a friend or a partner. You cling on to them for dear life and you're dependent on them, right? And you might stalk them. There's a lot of like stalking behavior that tends to come with this. Really wonderful example of this from a movie. If you've ever seen the movie What About Bob? If you plan to be a therapist, you have to watch this movie at some point. Because this poor guy, he like drives his therapist nuts and gives his therapist like a psychotic break, ends up marrying his daughter, stalks him everywhere he goes. Because he has dependent personality disorder. He becomes dependent on his therapist as his source of comfort, and like to reduce his anxiety. So I have a little like life and won't leave him alone, ends up marrying his daughter and driving him basically into like a psychotic state. Just does not ever leave him alone. Great example of someone who's very clingy, right? Like this is the person that he's decided to become clingy to, which is his therapist. That happens a fair amount of the time, but you can't do anything on your own. You're completely dependent on another person or maybe other people. Great movie about therapeutic boundaries, right? If you ever want to be a therapist, it's a good example. And clients, that definitely happens with clients, right? Where they become dependent on you. This is kind of to the extreme. The last one, and as I said, my favorite, I'll tell you why. I have a story with this one, right? But OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, has a lot in common with OCD, even the name, right? Probably like one of my bigger like pet peeves diagnostically, right? Oftentimes people will say, oh, that's so OCD of you, when it's probably more OCPD of you. They have things in common, but they're very different. This is marked by orderliness, perfectionism, and control, which are sometimes elements of OCD, but not always, right? So with this disorder, someone is very like driven by perfection, order, and control. Everything has to be just so. Like it has to be the way that you need it to be or want it to be, or it causes you a lot of anxiety, hence the location of this disorder. So there's a lot of like, you're very inflexible and rigid in the things that you need or expect. There's not a lot of flexibility. Other things, there's sometimes like hoarding behaviors that can be part of it, but the perfection, order, and control is very, very common here. Like everything has to be just so. And I have this picture of a child with a ruler drawing pictures, right? Like everything has to be perfect. And for some reason, I seem to be drawn to this disorder. Everybody that I've ever dated or married, my current partner of 22 years, has had OCPD. I seem to be drawn to it. I'm not sure why. So I have a story for you. It feels weird to talk about this person because this was like 25 years ago, right? Long, long time ago, before my current partner. But the first person that I ever dated had OCPD, and I discovered it very quickly on a certain day. So I've been dating this person for like 3 months, and we were going to Disneyland together. Now, when I go to Disneyland, all I care about are the churros. Like, that's it. Like, as long as I get churros and food, I'll do anything else, right? At least that was true then. Now I'm a little bit more like regimented with my plan, but I have kids, so I feel like I have to make the most of it. Disneyland's expensive, right? Like, it's stupid expensive. But anyway, so we had been dating like 3 months. We're driving together to Disneyland. And on our drive there, we're like talking back and forth about like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? And, you know, like kind of normal stuff. What are your favorite rides, whatnot? We're still kind of getting to know each other. And like, we get off on like the Mickey and Friends tram, and we're going in, and she starts in on this plan for the day. Now, I'm a planner too. I love plans. Plans are good, right? She's like, okay, when we walk in the park, we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna go here, and then here, and then here, and then here. Like, okay, sounds good. And the churro stop. Like, that's all I'm thinking in my mind. And she's like, oh, there's a churro cart right there. We'll stop there. Okay, great. Sounds good. I get my churro, don't care. Okay. Nothing wrong with having a plan, but here's where it goes wrong. We walk in, and the first thing on her to-do list was Splash Mountain. Okay, and I was like, why do we have to get soaking wet at 8 in the morning? But okay, that's what you want to do, whatever, right? I don't care. Splash Mountain was closed, and it ruined the entire day. Okay, this person, somebody who has this to a strong degree, you cannot recover from things not being just the way you want them to be. And that was the case. Like, so we walk in, and we walk past that little spot where it tells you all the wait times. Splash Mountain's closed. This is before like apps for Disneyland. And so she was just like, could not recover from this. Like, she's like, the day is like ruined. Like, I don't know what we do now. Like, well, now what do we do? It's like, well, we just pick up with item 2. Let's go to Thunder Mountain next. Like, no worries. We go here, and then we go here, and we pick up with it. No, right? Like, didn't work that way for her. Like, completely just so thrown by it. And we go in, and like, I finally got her to like go on Haunted Mansion. And the whole time we were on the ride, she was like, okay, well, so next we'll do this, and then this, and then this. I'm like, just enjoy the freaking ride, right? Like, calm down, it'll be fine. Like, enjoy the ride. It took her like 2 hours to recover from it, make a new plan, and then go from there, right? And that tends to be the case with this. Everything has to be just so, right? Like, so if you have this here, like if I moved it like that, it might drive you nuts. So I'll move it back just, right? But like everything has to be a certain way. You open the cabinet of somebody with this disorder, it's probably that every label is face forward, everything's organized a certain way. And again, nothing wrong with having a plan, nothing wrong with being organized, but it's the like, you can't recover when things don't go a certain way. Now, fast forward, so we stayed together like 3 years. I'm very patient, and I thought it was interesting, like nonetheless, like I'm all right with a plan. But, like, we were together like 3 years, but fast forward 3 years later, and my current partner, we've been together almost 22 years. I went to stay with her over the summer, and I walk in her house, and the first thing she says to me, she's like, I have a couple of pet peeves, and I'm gonna tell you, because I'd rather tell you than have you do them and have you be mad. I'm like, cool, thank you, I appreciate you telling me. She's like, please don't sit on the couch. Why not, right? She's like, I have a thing with like the couch pillows. They have to be a certain way. Just don't sit on the couch. Okay. Anything else? She's like, don't put away my laundry. Like, I like everything to be in a certain spot. I have everything organized a certain way. It's like, okay, no laundry, no couch. There were like a few other things too, right? So she goes to work. I literally sat on the floor, like, head over heels over this person. I was like, I'll sit on the floor if that's what it takes. I don't care, right? Like, sat on the floor, didn't want to mess up the cushions, right? In her closet, every hanger 1 inch apart, like exactly 1 inch. Like, you could measure it, everything color coded, everything a certain way. Open the cabinets, everything's organized a certain way. And I was like, why am I so drawn to this disorder? I was like, here we go again, right? At least it's familiar. The funniest part of it all, though, to me, is after 22 years of being with somebody with OCPD, then you add the 3 years before that with somebody else with OCPD. I have OCPD now to a degree. Like, I wouldn't diagnose it, but I have this. Like, I have certain things I'm like, my cups have to be in a certain spot. Like now, like if I were to like go like, oh, this is gonna hurt me to do, but if I were to go like this, like across that, like I want to erase it, and like I'm just not gonna look at it. Like, I want to erase it and fix it. When we go to Disneyland, I'm like, okay, we're gonna go here, then here, then here, then here, then here. Like, I've become that person that I was attracted to. And our daughters, like our kids have it too. Like my daughter Kaya, the last one who came in, I went to put her book away, and she's like, that's not where it goes. Like, pulls it out and puts it somewhere else. Everything is like meticulously placed in her room. And like my closet, I'm like, I'll put my clothes away, don't worry about it. Like, and my partner has mellowed, like we've kind of met in the middle after all these years. So just a random story for you, but just kind of interesting with this, like everything has to be just so, right? Or it causes you great anxiety, and you might not be able to recover from it. Yeah.
talking multiple times with the therapist.
Yeah.
Cause and honestly, like, it is such a stress for the other partner,
Mhm.
especially if the other partner is not as patient as you said you were.
I try.
No, I can't, like, I freak out if like my boyfriend makes the right turn instead of the left turn, like out of our house. I'm like, no, you're going the wrong way. And I start freaking out and I
Sure.
demand to drive. It's particularly bad with driving.
Mm,
And then I'm particularly bad with dates and times. It's like, if we are not out of the house by like, let's say like 4 a.m. and we do that 4:15, like I cry. Like,
Yeah.
it's like totally, like, it kind of destroys my whole day.
Sure.
And it's like, my boyfriend still is like, come on, like, it's not a big deal, like, you're ruining like the day. And it's like it's honestly the worst
Yeah.
thing ever, because it's just constantly like worrying about dates and times, how I'm gonna drive places, and
Yeah.
like, it's very similar to OCD,
mhm.
but
That's the overlap there,
it's,
right?
it's really
Mhm.
interesting, but it turns into like an anxiety attack. It
Yeah.
turns into like, I can't handle it, where I don't know much about OCD, but I think it's a little different.
That one's more like rituals to get rid of
Yeah,
anxiety, but
yeah.
that's a common thread,
It's
right? Like the
It
worrying.
is so crazy. And
Mhm.
it's like, I only learned about it recently after speaking with my therapist and being like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like my boyfriend like puts things away like so bad. Like the refrigerator is like a picture there. It's like, I have a way, I
Yeah.
put everything away and
Right.
he like can't get it. And
Uh-huh.
it's like the biggest strain on our relationship.
And it has to be that way. Like if you
Yeah.
don't turn this way versus this way, it messes with you. It's that planning and
But only
perfecting.
because it only affects certain things, because other things, like, I'm not like big on like keeping my room that clean, and he is, that's
Sure.
an area that doesn't bother me. It's really weird what I've decided to really focus on.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
And it doesn't
disorder.
have to be global. It can be little specific
Yeah.
things like this, like I said, I so badly want to like fix it because it's driving me bananas, right? But like I would, if that was on a piece of paper, I'd throw it away and rewrite it. Like I would, like I actually had to reprint it because I did it on my notes from last year and I went to bring it in and it was this big old X across it. I was like, I'm reprinting that. Like I'm not bringing that. Like it's just like it can be little things, not everything.
Yeah, and it's like, I have this big giant like dry erase calendar. I have every single assignment, every single time it's due. It's like kind of the worst thing ever, but it's really interesting.
And then,
Just
and
live
those
with
things
it.
can be good, but it's
a good, it's a
yeah.
good thing,
right.
like overall, like I have good grades because of it,
Mhm.
but it's just a huge mental toll.
Sure.
It's exhausting.
It can go too far, yeah.
So my house, like my home, has always looked like a model.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like we do with it,
Sure.
because my mom is like so extreme, like to the point where like you open our cabinets and people will be like, are you joking? Like when people come over and they see like, oh, like those things where the cups are, and they open the cup cabinet and they're like, seriously, like you live like this, you know? And like it's so
Yeah.
crazy. Like you can just see it. Like we don't host holidays because she can't handle it.
Sure.
Like, when other people come into our house and we have no
It's
control
too
over
much.
how they treat it,
Mhm.
she like seriously can't like deal. And but she's turned all of us into that.
Yeah.
Like, my whole family, and like I have 2 older brothers, and our house is never a mess, and it never was growing up. And like my mom's like, I don't know, I just trained them not to do that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and that's your model. That's normal too,
yeah,
right?
and so
That's how it should
really
be.
is, like, it's so hard being in a relationship with somebody who's the complete opposite of that.
Uh-huh.
Cause like I have no control over like his room or his car or his bathroom, and it's just like, it's seriously so stressful. But then like when he comes over to my house and you have to follow my.
Yeah.
Because I have so many rules, like.
And hopefully eventually you kind of move middle, right? But it's hard when you have very different like takes and perspectives on that, right? Yeah.
Someone, could it be something that, or could it be a coping mechanism
Yeah.
for someone that had something in their life that they couldn't control, so now they control stuff?
Definitely. I mean, we hit it right on the head right there. That's a very common reason is people maybe didn't have that control as a child. And so now you're trying to like micromanage everything and have that control. That can be part of it. It can kind of stem from OCD like thinking, it can be modeled. But like if you have a parent who has it, or someone you grew up with, who can kind of end up sort of being that way, right? So it can be a couple of things, but oftentimes it comes from a lack of control, and then you're trying to grasp for it.
I'm wondering if divorce can be part of that, where
Sure.
you didn't have control of the relationship, because my grandmother definitely had that. But the funny thing is, so my mom ended up being the complete opposite, instead of being kind of modeled after her. But I grew up a lot around my grandmother, and I picked up a lot of her stuff. So living with somebody that's a complete mess, and I like everything alphabetized and color coded, and my favorite toy is a label maker, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I have 2 of them. But and packing with somebody like that, everything is specific and in alphabetized. I'm not kidding, that's how I pack.
I'm laughing because I've seen it,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's, I mean, and it hurts if
Mhm.
somebody takes that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm laughing because I used to be just throw it in a bag, I'm out of here.
and go.
That was always how I was. After 22 years of being with somebody who's this way, I make a list of the things I need to pack for every trip. And then I cross each one out as I put it in. Packing takes me forever. And
Yeah,
my partner's always like, just put it in the bag, let's go. It's 3 days, you don't need 50, whatever, And I'm like, I might. You never know. I've watched way too many shows recently, like The Wilds and Yellow Jackets. I might get in a plane crash. She's like, we're not flying. I know, but you never know. You never know. Yeah.
I recently went to Renfrew a couple weeks ago with a friend, and she's diagnosed with just OCD.
Sure.
And she was so dead set on going to the joust at the very end.
Yeah.
And we walked to the joust. She was like, okay, we have half an hour, we have 10 minutes. It kept counting down. She was like, okay, we can't stay at this stall for very long. We have to go down because it starts in 10 minutes. We're like, okay.
10 minutes. That time gets the job.
It is.
It's at the very end, and
Yeah.
he goes, closed.
Yeah.
He
Oh.
goes, it's all full. She sat there for 10 minutes sobbing because,
Yeah.
and her boyfriend was so bad. He was like, you ruined the whole day now that you're just sitting here, because we got there late because I had to work until 11:30, so we didn't get there until 1.
Well, not only that, but the lines to get in. I've been watching the TikToks.
It's
Well, we
so
went
late.
too. It was crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
everything was evening by the time we were getting there, so
Mhm.
it was not really that busy.
Right on.
Because everybody left in the middle of the day, but her boyfriend was like, you ruined the entire day, because you're sitting here sobbing,
Yeah.
and all these things are making it worse. And it was until my partner and I went up and said, yeah, it did suck, it ruined everything,
Yeah.
I get that, we should make a new plan though. That's when she actually was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's make a new plan.
Yeah.
It was only when we affirmed that, yeah, it does suck, yeah,
Mhm.
it did kind of ruin the entire plan. That's when she was like, we should go do something else. I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like,
We missed the jousting too. We walked over there. We ended up watching the washing wenches or something instead that are right next to it, which was hilarious.
throwing watermelon, that way all the women there was covered in watermelon.
Oh, that I don't
know,
know. But now I'm
something about
curious.
that. There was a good group of women that was just covered in watermelon.
Renaissance fairs are interesting.
There's something
They're
special.
very, and very, I don't know, very character driven. But I mean, that rigidity is very similar to this of I can't move on if I don't make that show. I can't move on if that ride is closed. Everything has to be a certain way, right? Those are kind of common elements. And again, nothing wrong with having a plan, nothing wrong with having a preference, nothing wrong with wanting your couch pillows a certain way. But when someone has to sit on the floor or I would say you've gone a little further, right? Now I can sit on the couch. All these years I can sit on the couch, but I see her go behind me and fix the pillows. She doesn't say anything, but she's always fixing the pillows. And every now and then she'll be like, what's wrong with all of you with these pillows? She'll lose it over the pillows. And I just laugh in the back of my head. And the funny thing is her dad, I see where she gets it from. He's that way. He does not like his couch pillows messed up. So whenever I'm mad at him, this is my father-in-law. So whenever I'm mad at him, I go to his house and knock all the pillows on the floor. And I just watch him sit there all mad, and it just makes me so happy on the inside. That's probably not nice of me. I'm super patient with my partner, but not with him. And he's my father-in-law. Okay, I'm gonna pass this out before we run out of time here. So, this should only take you a few minutes, but work on it and bring it with you next class. If you're not going to be here, make sure you email it to me so you get credit. This is one of those activities. So what you're gonna do, and I think this is kind of fun, imagine if you were going to a party where everybody at the party had a personality disorder. And you're gonna figure out which one that each
Please
have.
no.
That's really fun.
It does sound like fun, I wanna go.
Oh, no, I wanna go.
So what you'll notice is the front is a description of all these people at a party, and each one of them has a personality. So if you flip to the back really quickly, there's a little description of each one, which I think is really helpful, like for kind of keeping them separate. And then you see the people at the bottom. Okay, so what you're gonna do is read through this and decide which of these personality disorders each one of them has. You don't have to explain why, just which one, so it shouldn't take you very long. Not all of them are used, and nobody has, like, there's no overlap, okay? So each person will have a different one. So try and figure out, and 2 of them I believe aren't used, there's only 8 people. But what we'll do next time at the beginning is we'll go over it together. There's at least one person on here I would, in theory, date, you can find them on. In theory, there are some issues, but in theory. So I'll leave these up here if you need another one or, have any questions. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you all on Monday. We'll finish this up and then start chapter 14.